Yes. Good?
We're ready.
We're ready? Okay.
Thank you.
Call this meeting to order, the Finance Committee of October 10th, 2023, 4:35 PM. Roll call, let the record reflect, Alder Galvin, Alder Hutchinson, Alder Johnson are present, Alder Burnett is excused. Item C, approval of agenda.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Galvin, second by Hutchinson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item D, approval of minutes from the September 26th, 2023 meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Galvin, second by Hutchinson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item E, regular business. Number 1, presentation of the financial management plan by Ayler's Public Finance Advisors. Director Ellenbecker.
Unfortunately, I don't see our representative on the line at this point, so I would either ask to hold that item until they either show up online or we'll push it back to the next meeting.
Entertain a motion to hold.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Galvin to hold per Director Ellenbecker's direction there. Second by Hutchinson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 2, consideration with possible action to purchase one Superliner Type 1 ambulance from Jefferson Fire and Safety for $380,761, held over from the 9/26/23 Finance Committee meeting staff.
I can start. Yeah, we held this one over. We wanted to make sure we had better information in the packet. I know the chief is here to talk to it. This is an item that was approved to order when we went through the 2023 bonding, and so now the purchase order is being placed.
Is this number in alignment with what we authorized for bonding?
Yes, the difference is you had allowed $349,000. The difference in this purchase order is the additional cot that's in there, but the vehicle ambulance itself is the same price.
Is that part of the bond? Will that be part of the bond request, or is that coming through
It
operations?
will be part of the bond request,
Okay.
yes. So all of our ambulances at this time have the power load cot system, and so that price includes that.
Okay, so that cot's not authorized right now then, right?
It would be after this, it's part of the original proposal, so.
Right, so I'm saying the prior approval though did not cover that. We would
Correct, that
have
was
to.
a general number, and then we saw like significant price increases, and then, like I said, this cot increase, so. that would be different.
So, okay, folks, so either we do 380 with the cot, or we stay as is, no cot.
Well, all the other rigs have it, right?
Yep, right, yeah, and I'm not suggesting it's a choice, I'm
Fine.
just saying that's the choice in front of us though, right? So, you just need a motion.
Motion approved. Second.
Motion by Galvin, second by Hutchinson, any discussion, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 3, consideration of possible action to purchase a new K-9 dog and training from Elite K-9 for a total of $20,225. This doesn't need to be in front of us, does it?
The reason why it's in front of you, because this vendor, we spend more, this might be one purchase, but however, in total, we, with that vendor, we are having several contracts. So this one actually would put it over the $25,000 in total for the contract.
All right, can we entertain a motion?
So approved. Second.
I have a motion by Galvin, a second by Hutchinson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 4, consideration with possible action to accept the Federal Pipeline Emergency Response Grant for $429,891. Any discussion? Want to talk about it? That's a big
If
deal.
you want to, yeah, it's a huge deal. So this grant is a zero match for us. It's a grant that's designed to help our firefighters be better prepared for pipeline incidents. So it is designed to buy equipment, provide training, and then also training courses, including backfill and overtime for our personnel to be better prepared to respond to natural gas incident or other incidents involving pipes.
Okay.
This will get everyone trained up.
This will get our hazmat team, and then also the props themselves, plus our personnel being trained will allow us to train all our additional members.
So that's what I mean, it'll cover every firefighter will be trained.
To some level, yes. Our hazmat team will obviously have more advanced
Right.
training, but yes.
Much like
this
a
will
SWAT
provide-
team, right?
Yep,
Yep,
correct.
okay. All right.
All right.
That's-
I did have a comment form that came in from Alexander Gannon, and I'm not sure if he's interested in speaking or not.
I just wanted to know,
If
like,
you do
We'd
have
entertain a
any-
motion to open the floor.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion by
If you
Galvin, a
want to
second by
speak, if you wanna
Hutchinson.
come up and,
All those in
ask
favor
your
say
question.
aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Yeah, go ahead and step up to the podium. If you could just say your name and address for the record.
Sure, just right up here. We just need your name and your address.
name is Alexander Gannon. My Address is 930 Clement Street, apartment number 5. Oh, too much. Green Bay, Wisconsin. So, I wanted to know more about, like, what, who is specifically funding these projects for if you were to allow funding. That's all I really want to know.
Okay.
If I can even ask that question.
Sure, you can.
Sure, this is the funding source that's through the Department of Transportation. And like I said, it's designed for prepare emergency responders to provide additional training and resources to be better prepared.
All right,
Okay, thank you.
Good.
motion to close the floor?
Second. Motion by Galvin, second by Hutchinson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
Move to approve.
Second?
A motion by Hutchinson, second by Galvin. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
All right.
Any opposed, motion carries. Congratulations, Chief. It's a big award for the city. All right, item 5, consideration with possible action to accept the State of Wisconsin DNR grant for $10,000 with a matched amount of $10,490 from the 2023 operating budget for equipment replacement.
So this is a grant that would provide money for us to offset some of our costs. Our current gear for wildland firefighting response is outdated and has reached the end of the life. This will provide funding for half of that for us.
Okay? And the rest comes from operating
It would be
budget?
an operating
So
budget.
no new authorizations there. Any discussion? Not, we'll entertain a motion.
To approve?
Second.
Motion by Galvin, second by Hutchinson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 6, consideration with possible action to purchase risk terrain modeling RTM software and service from SimSci for a 3-year period for a total of $81,900 funded through the Office of Violence Prevention Grant. Any questions on this?
Just real quick, I mean, give us an overview.
I think that we either have the director or the commander in the back of the room, if one of you want to speak to this item. Do you want to come to the front of the room? Thank you.
Right, so this is a new software that we're super excited about because it's actually looking at crime statistics, how they play into neighborhoods, and what factors in the neighborhood could affect that. So for example, when we enter all this data into the system, they might find that this is a hot spot for crime, but we might look that there's like a bus shelter there, a bus stop there, and something else that we can look at then, not just as a crime stat, but we can maybe use some block grant funds to fix up that area and do things that would decrease the crime. So this is data software that's helping us determine kind of what those environmental factors are when we're looking at crime. Come on, it's a good program.
Well, no, I'm just,
Make her
I saw
beg.
that nonverbal.
oh, not making a big, it's just, so the PD is using this, or your organization, your
It's gonna-
department? or
Well, we're gonna
both?
work with the police department and all of the crime analysts. It's gonna run through the Office of Violence Prevention, and it's funded through that grant through the medical college. So our director from OVP will be using that, along with the data people, and then also the police department. And then our department will be entering, we're all gonna be entering the data into the system. So it's not just gonna be crime, it's gonna be street conditions and whatever data we can enter into the system, we're gonna use that.
I'm interested that, you know, I don't know, how soon do you think this will be up and running?
Well, I think once it's approved, it's just a matter of signing the contract and us starting to enter the data. I mean, we only have like 3 years for the Office of Violence Prevention, so we want to get this in as fast as we can.
Well, that's why I think it'd be interesting for the council, I mean, as soon as you can get some statistical data
Yes,
and show cause and effect, and then if we can impact that cause and effect.
yes, absolutely. I mean, we plan on using it to program our block grant dollars, you know, more specifically in
Sure.
neighborhoods where there might be issues. with
Certainly
regards
makes
to neighborhoods.
sense. I know the PD has been struggling with crime analysis,
Yep.
trying to make sense of it.
Right.
You know, what does it show us other than burglaries are here,
Right,
or auto thefts are here?
Right.
You know, so, all right, I like it.
And I think to Alder Galvin's point too, once this grant is expired, right, if this is a subscription you'd like to continue, you're gonna obviously have to make the case.
correct.
Right.
As
So-
with the OVP, right? We need to see if it works.
Yep.
Exactly.
at that time.
Exciting.
Cool.
All right,
All right, any discussions?
nope,
Discussion, questions, entertain a motion?
motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Galvin, second by Hutchinson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 7, consideration with possible action on the acceptance of the fiscal year '23 Brownfields Community-Wide Assessment Grant through US EPA for $500,000. Any discussion on this one?
No.
But same deal, Cheryl walk out.
Yeah.
Congratulations to Cheryl and Matt as well. Matt, there you are. And we announced today at RDA that Matt also secured $1 million Brownfields grant with the EPA over on the Badger Sheet Metal site. So congratulations on that. Keep kicking ass. It's $8.3 million on the shipyard site so far. And of course, this is needed for other sites throughout the city too. But
Yep.
this is just to be a slam dunk unless there's questions.
Motion approved.
Good. Second.
All right, we got a motion by Galvin, a second by Hutchinson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Item 8, consideration of possible action to purchase network switches from Camera Corner for $39,937 as part of the annual budget. Dave, you want to add anything to this?
This was started last year, a two-phase project. We bought 50,000 last year and we broke it over 2 years, so it's just replacement of our antiquated remote site switches.
Great. Any discussion?
Nope.
Entertain a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Hutchinson, second by Galvin. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
So you're online now, if you'd like to go back to item number 1.
So we held it until they came on. I don't think we have to take a procedural action to bring it back. So we'll just go to item 1, presentation of the financial management plan by Ayler's Public Finance Advisor. Advisors, can we get the TV up here or not?
Sure. Think so.
If they throw stuff on the screen, I think this one's easier at least for us to see. If it's complicated, don't worry about it.
Let's see.
Okay, Diana, you want to do a little intro?
Sure. Online, we have with us Todd Taves and Harry Allen, and they're from Ellers, our financial advisors. And this is really an annual overview of some of our financials that they work with us on, and thought it would be nice to bring it back to you, kind of as we get into the budget and as we get into the capital improvement. So Harry or Todd, you're welcome to introduce yourself if you'd like. And you can go ahead. I will put this presentation on the screen when you're ready.
Perfect, thank you. So yes, Harry Allen with Ellers, Todd Taves is on the line as well. We've been working with the city since 2019 to prepare a financial management plan. So essentially what we do is we take the next year's budget. So in this case, we took the 2024 preliminary budget information, plug that in, and then look the next 4 years on, just to see where are we now, where are we going next year, and what might the next couple of years look like, just to give you a high-level overview of the financial health of the city and different pressure points that we might see coming down the line. With that said, if you have the presentation up, Diana, we can roll on to slide 2, just to give you all a quick overview of what we're going to cover today. I'll keep this around 5-10 minutes, somewhere in that range. But I'll introduce the financial management plan, what we do, why we do it. We'll go through the operating funds and how we're projecting things forward. We'll touch on debt service, where it is now, and some assumptions we're making into the future. Built into that also is a capital improvement plan. And then we'll wrap everything up by looking at the total levy projection and some of the different things that we might see being pressures in that regards. So if we want to keep on chugging along, I think we can go to slide 3 now.
All right. If you want to start talking, let me figure this out.
Yeah, sure thing. So the main thing here is, as with every other community anywhere, the queue for capital improvements definitely exceeds the ability to fund them on an annual basis, which in Wisconsin, we see that driving a lot of debt. That's really the only way that communities have found to successfully fund their capital improvements on an annual basis. And the main consideration here is balancing the tax increases or maintaining that level tax rate into the future, whatever the desire is on that end, balancing that with the need for public investment to keep up with all your infrastructure. General fund revenues have been mostly stagnant. When we look at the pool of money that goes into the general fund, that levy can only be grown by net new construction on an annual basis, and that's the majority of the revenues within your general fund. So we're going to take a look at some of the levy limit challenges that exist. They're alleviated a little bit with the additional revenues under Act 12. And then we'll also look at some of the expenditures and what are the driving items of maybe some levy limit pressure here down the road. We can keep chugging along there, Diana. We can go to the next slide even. Every year, the city goes through an update to its credit rating. And I just wanted to summarize at a high level some of the findings from this year. They're largely the same as prior years, but Moody's did go through and they updated their methodology. So I just wanted to give you an update as to where the city is looking under that new methodology. Didn't have any impact on the rating, but they are looking at things just slightly different than they did before. One of the larger portions that they look at is the economy of the city. So the city does have strong growth and a diverse economic profile, so that reduces the impact or strain if any one sector were to be more impacted than another. Overall, the city does score at the A level. You're AA3 rated, so this is lower than your actual rating. So this is a weaker section for the city, but A level is still strong. The metrics that the city does directly control, so looking at city finances, they're well managed, and the city has a considerable cash balance and cash on hand. So this cash on hand is not always available as fund balance, but it is a good indicator of liquidity. This metric scores at the AAA level, so this is a very strong position for the city, and this is the area that the city does have a lot of control as to what you do and how this ultimately gets scored. So we can go to the next slide, and this is us duplicating what Moody's provides every year. The process, Moody's will do an analysis of the audits of the city, and then we have a rating call with the Moody's analyst, and they'll try to get a feel for where is the city now, and what's happened in the time since the last audit. And from that, they take all the information they gather, plug it into their systems, and it spits out this scorecard, which gives you a detailed analysis as to how they arrived at your AA3 rating. So I highlighted this earlier, but the economy, there's 3 different metrics they look at there. All of them came in at that A level. The financial performance for the city, there's 2 metrics. Both of those score at the AAA level. The institutional framework, the city can't control this. This is really determined by what state you're in and what are the rules you operate under. This is a AA level. That's the same for all Wisconsin municipalities. The leverage, this is definitely an area where we see score worse in Wisconsin just because of the way municipalities are funded. There is a need to take out more debt to pay for capital projects. So we see many communities having lower scores on the long-term liabilities ratio. The city of Green Bay is at the A level for this and a AA for fixed cost ratio, which is similar to the prior one, but looking on more of an annual basis. So when you take all that, the city scores at the AA3. As a part of our analysis, we don't just look at where is the levy now, where does it need to grow. We also want to look at what is the impact of increasing that levy into the future. So one of the main assumptions that drives that is where are your values going. So this is a 5-year look back of where equalized values have been, and we use that 5-year history to project where values might go into the future. So we take this around 9% change is what you've seen in the past 5 years. Past 5 years haven't been the most normal 5 years any of us have experienced, so we've discounted that 5-year average by 50%. And so we're more of around a 4.5% annual growth in overall values. But this is the equalized value, so this is market value. That's going to change every year. What we show in our report, so all the impacts that we show are based on assessed value. So we've gone through and assumed that there's an assessed value change every 6 years. But in the interim, we're only increasing it for any growth within the tax increment districts. We'll keep chugging along. This is looking at the fund balance of the city. You'll see from 2019 to 2020, it looks like the city acquired a whole bunch of money. That didn't actually happen. It was a change in auditor, and just they classified some balance differently than the previous auditor had. The story to tell here is the city does have a considerable fund balance. You can see that unassigned GFOA recommendation is 2 months of general fund revenues. When we look at unassigned, you're a little bit below that 2 month, but if we add in committed and restricted, you're pretty much right at that GFOA recommendation, and then you have a large assigned fund balance as well. Looking forward as to how we're projecting the levy, we have held most non-levy revenue sources held flat, with a couple caveats here. Our model has accounted for increases in state shared revenues from Act 12, so we know what next year's disbursement will be, and then we projected future years based on where state sales tax collections have changed. So those are on a 3% inflation factor in future years. We've accounted for assumptions in investment earnings, so we've shown increased earnings next year and then stepping that down in future years, just not knowing exactly what will happen with investment earnings, but it looks like rates are staying high for at least the short term. We've also accounted for some increased inspection fees in 2024, and I want to drive home that what we show in our model, this is the worst case for levy. It's probably not likely that all the non-levy revenue sources stay flat. Some of them might increase, some might go down, but I want to drive home that we're holding everything else flat, so we're really just solving for the levy in our model. And then the expenditures, we've classified all the expenses. We did a line item analysis of all the city's expenses, and we classified them in different buckets. And depending on the bucket, we assigned a different inflator factor to it. The biggest driver that we've seen for increases in expenses is those personnel related and contractual obligations. And 2024 is based on an estimated general fund expenditure of $102.2 million. So when we go to the next slide here, those percentages for 2024, I wouldn't pay too much attention to all those. Those are really plugs to get us to that 102.2 million. Future years, we're using those assumptions for commodities as well at 1.5%. But the big driver here is the bottom, wages at 3.5%. There is a larger increase from 23 to 24. We have that at 7.5%. What the actual number is might be a little bit lower, but wages is a big driver for 2024 and continued into future years. What does all this mean for the general fund when we take everything and put it together? We're showing 102.2 million of expenses in 2024, jumping up to 105 and 25, and about even in future years from there. And at the top, there's a lot of numbers on here, but at the top, pretty much everything but that local property taxes is held flat. And so you can see that local property tax line item, the very top line item, that's stepping up every year to solve for that increase in expenses of the general fund. And we'll get into what this means in a little bit, but we're going to flip here and look at the GO debt service that's outstanding for the city. So this schedule is looking at the debt service that's outstanding today, and over on the left is the total GO debt payment. So for 2024, the city's paid about 23.1 million in GO debt service, but there's a substantial portion of debt service that's paid for other sources other than the property tax levy. So we're taking out all of those revenues, which make up around 49% of all the debt service paid by the city through the maturity of all the outstanding debt. When we break all that out, we get over to the right of what actually needs to be paid for from the levy, and we're showing 10.5 million of the 2024 levy will go to GO debt service. And then when we look on a tax rate basis, 2023, that was about $1.16 for the tax rate for debt service. And in 2024, we're projecting about $1.28 would be the tax rate apportioned to debt service. And when we're looking at a $150,000 home in 2023, accounting for a revaluation, we're showing a $17 increase in taxes for the GO debt service from 23 to 24. This page is building in some future borrowings for the city. So we've modeled these out at, I believe my computer's freezing up on me, but I think it was 17 million of annual borrowing with 12 million supported by the levy and 5 million from non-levy sources. And then I highlighted in 2028, this is accounting for a larger borrowing in 2027. We added in $8 million of additional borrowing in 2027 to fund a new fire station for the city. So that impact will be hitting 1 year after the debt's issued. So it's going to impact the 2028 levy and then on. So you can see the levy we're showing, or let's look at the tax impact. Right now we're showing $185 as a property tax bill apportioned to GO debt service on $150,000. And then at the end of our modeling period, we're showing it stepping up to $263. There's likely other future debt that isn't built into this, so I really just want to focus on 2029. Anything after that, when we start seeing those decreases, that's because we're not adding in any new debt at that point. Municipalities in Wisconsin are restricted to 5% of their total equalized value. That's the maximum amount of principal that can be outstanding on general obligation debt. The city is rated, as we covered earlier, so it's very important that we keep an eye on how much of this debt limit is being used by the city and how much is available for future projects. The story here is that historically the city has been lower in the GO debt limit. It's 37% is what we're estimating the end of this year, and then we're showing that hovering around 33%, even with the new debt issues being built in here. So status quo staying around that 30%. And then this next slide is a levy projection. So what are we showing the change in levy needing to be in 24, 5, 6, 7, and 8? 24, we've modeled it at around a 3% levy increase. And then we see a bigger jump in 25 at 8%, 26, 6%, and then hovering around that 4 or 5% in 27 and 28. Again, this model is using the levy as a solve, holding all other revenues constant. So this is a worst case scenario. But when we look at the change in taxes at the bottom, you can see it's about a $25 increase in 24, and then 80 in 25, and then somewhere between 40 and 60 for the other years. This is looking at the assessed value projections compared to tax rate projection. You can see the assessed value stays flat in non-revaluation years, and that tax rate is staying about $8, going up a little bit, coming down a little bit, just depending on where the valuations are at. And now we take a look at levy limits. So you're restricted to growing your levy on an annual basis by net new construction or zero. The city has had net new construction in the prior years of around 0.5% to 1.5%, anywhere in that range. So what we've done is taken that average and discounted it by 50% as well. So that came out to around 0.56% is how we're showing the net new construction. So the amount they were able to grow the levy by each year. We do know the number for 2024, so that is plugged in here. The story here is that the city has not claimed there's an adjustment E on the levy limit form for GO debt service. And so the city can claim up to the total GO debt service payment for the following year, which I have plugged in here as that post July 1, 2005 GO debt. So for 24, that's 23.1 million. That's the most that the city could claim. But the city only pays, it's 10.5 million for GO debt next year. And the city's only claiming, we're showing I think I cut off something from here. But at a high level, the city could claim a larger adjustment E to pay debt service than it does, but there hasn't been a need to claim the full adjustment E for the debt service paid from the levy. So a portion of the operating levy is being used to pay GO debt service right now. And what we're showing is that in 24, that still works. In 25, that still works. And then in 26, things might change where that adjustment E might need to be increased up to the total amount of GO debt service paid by the levy. So you're claiming that full adjustment, and potentially even higher for some of that GO debt that's paid from other non-levy sources. So I just want to pause here for a quick second. This graph here at the bottom represents a potential issue that might come. I'm not saying it will happen, but it's something that could happen. This purple bar on the left, this is a net levy required for debt service, and the orange bar is a line E adjustment, so that's where you're claiming to increase your levy every year for GO debt service. And then the right, that's your total GO debt service payment in those given years. So right now in 2023, purple is larger than orange. That's generally a good thing. 24, same case. 25, the same case. 26, we see things change where that orange bar is now larger than the purple bar. And what this is showing is that you're claiming a larger adjustment E, but you're not paying debt service with that. You're using that additional bump, the difference between purple and orange, and you're paying for operations with that portion of the adjustment. So you're creating a structural deficit in your budget if that abated debt were to fall off in the future. So this could be a temporary solution for the city, probably not a long-term solution, but it's something we're modeling may need to be claimed in the future. We'll keep an eye on this. We are updating the FMP on an annual basis, so we'll have a good idea of when this will be coming, if it does come. We can chug along to the next slide. As I mentioned earlier, wages and services continue to be the biggest driver of expenditure growth, and we expect that to continue. Capital improvement needs may outweigh the possible funding available, which puts pressure on the ability to prioritize needs. And levy limits do continue to be a concern. The city has available capacity to absorb these increases now, but the long-term structure may be on balance. And then the last thing I want to point out here, it's not in my presentation, but expenditure restraint program. That program was modified slightly under Act 12, so there's no comparison between the 2024 and the 2023 budget to account for likely expenditure increases because they're giving you additional money under Act 12. They expect that expenses will increase as well, which would probably blow everybody out of the water when it comes to expenditure restraint. So they are not doing a comparison of 24 to 23, which creates a one-time opportunity to reset your floor for future years. the city did qualify for a payment next year, and so they will automatically qualify for a payment in an equal amount in 2025. That's all I had. That was a lot of information, so if there are questions, I'm happy to take them.
Alders? I have a couple, if nobody else has any.
Go ahead.
I want to talk about the levy limit a little bit. I think that's one of the most broadly misunderstood concepts by our council, and I think it's important. I know a lot of our council members will rewatch this meeting, even if they're not here tonight. When you're talking about net new growth in construction, is that TID in or TID out?
Right now, that includes all growth within the city, so anything within TIDs. That did get modified under Act 12 for new TIDs, where you only get 90% of new construction for new TIDs. That's TIDs with a 1/125 base. So that's still a year away from when that will take effect. Right now, it is all net new construction, whether it's in or out of TID.
Are you making any assumptions in this model about maybe a slowing of construction based on elevated interest rates?
We maintain a flat assumption for future years of 50% of the 5-year average, so that 0.56%. We didn't do any specific changes to any years. We kept that flat for our modeling period.
Okay. So obviously the whole purpose, of course, of raising interest rates is to slow that growth. That can sometimes be a lag, and I just, it doesn't seem like things have slowed just yet for us, but, I just think it's a point for council to be cognizant of as we head into subsequent years. Director Ellenbecker, the fund balance, what is our current policy in terms of the reserve?
The goal is to be between 9 to 17% of our general fund expenses from the prior year. And that would be the unreserved, non-assigned. And then the total fund balance, I believe is somewhere from 16% to 25%, I think, of the prior year expenditures. And so, as Harry had said, the unassigned is just slightly below our internal policy, but the total fund balance is within our policy.
When we passed last year's budget, there were a couple of provisions that I know I added, but council supported. Have we had to dip into general fund for those items? Do you know offhand?
One of the largest item was your fuel, and that is
Yes.
coming in quite favorable this year to the budget because we had to increase it so much. I don't believe we will be tapping into the contingent or to the applied surplus for fuel. However, the legal costs, we have not paid out the majority of those expenses. And so at this point, I believe the attorney is going to come to the finance committee toward the end of the year and saying, we still have the expenses. We just haven't gotten the bills yet. We haven't gotten as far down the line that she, potentially she will be asking for a carryover of those additional expenses.
Okay. Debt limit policy, 5% of equalized value, correct? Well, that's the state statute. Our policy has been 50%, is that accurate?
Our internal policy says that the goal is to stay at 50% or less of what the state allows. And as Harry was just showing that currently we're at about 37% of our allowable, so we're well below our internal policy.
Okay. And the reason I kind of bring some of this stuff up, and I think it's one of the most striking things that's coming out of here, which is, in what I'm not gathering this modeling captures, and I'll let you or Ehlers comment on this, but the fact that the modeling doesn't meet our capital needs. And we have a capital improvement plan, as you guys know, that you've seen, that is quite substantial. We hear it all the time. We need streets, we need equipment that our staff can use, we need to fix bridges. We have a lot of capital needs. And this modeling doesn't meet those needs. So of course, it's always a question of what do you not do? And that's never an easy discussion. Sometimes it's totally taking something off the table. Sometimes it's kicking the can down the road and then it costs you more later. State of Wisconsin has a really bad policy that forces municipalities to go into debt. to fund these capital needs because of levy limits and expenditure restraint and our inability, to bring that levy up to where it really needs to be. So I think there was a lot of discussion around this at the budget time last year. If you have the ability, and I'm just using round numbers for the sake of discussion, if you have the ability to raise your levy by 3% and you only take 2%, it creates a structural deficit for you moving forward, because now the following year, you can only take a percentage of that, right? And so you end up in this downward spiral. And I think that's just a really important discussion topic for us as we head into budget year, in the way that we think about our capital needs moving into the future. One of the things I would like to see in this modeling, if it's still a possibility, is, what if, and I don't know, I think I saw in here that we're only calling for, $10 million maybe of bonding, but we have like 30 million of capital needs, right? Am I missing those numbers?
There's two columns. There is one for bonding, which is the 20-year, and then there's also the 10-year notes, and that's about 4 million. And it's either, like Harry said, it's either 14 or he thought it was 17 million. We have that built in every year. And so the number he built in is what I had given him.
Okay.
Again, what's a little deceiving is when I bring you the capital expenses, or the capital improvement plan that we talked about the last time, you do see 30 million in a column. Again, at that point, I didn't have any of the revenues backed off. And so that's why almost every year we're at $25–30 million worth of expenses. We have $10 million of other revenue sources, and that's why we end up borrowing somewhere, like last year again, about 17–18 million. So,
But not all of that's levy supported, right? And
correct.
And the thing that I'm getting at right now is I want to understand the relationship in our modeling of, and again, I'm using round numbers, right? But let's say the recommendation is 10 million, but we have 30 million of capital needs. Let's say 20 million of levy supported capital needs. How does that, if you reverse engineer that back into the levy limits, right? The increase that we're allowed and the impact for us to borrow additional money and have that increase cover that debt service and not create a structural deficit. You know what I'm saying?
Yep, and I'm gonna look at Harry, do you have that number? I thought it was more, somewhere about 17 million we have for ongoing borrowing.
Yeah, that was our base assumption, was 17 million total of annual borrowing, 12 million supported by the levy,
Okay.
5 million supported by other sources.
So that
Okay.
has been tweaked, and a couple years back, we were trying to keep it at 8 million for general levy, and so now he is using a 12 million. And again, last year also, we borrowed about 17 million. Again, it was not all general levy. There was some sanitary, some storm, and a little bit of parking in there. So, those are the assumptions. We could certainly ask them to run other scenarios for us. That was information that I had passed on to them.
Yeah, so let me digest that, and I think, Diana, what I'll probably do is come in and talk to you, and
Sure.
just that way I can be a little bit more explicit about what I need, so that council can be an advocate to help craft a strong budget that doesn't put us in a bad position in future years. Because I think we've seen a lot of that in the past, and we need every member of council to understand the complexity of public financing so that we're putting ourselves in a good position to serve the citizens of this community.
Yeah, and as Chief, we just had a meeting today, had said, many of their costs have doubled in the last 5 years. So it's hard to make the assumption that we're going to bond the same amount every year when prices and expenses are going up. So we certainly could talk about, maybe they could run some additional modeling for us.
Right, and it goes hand in hand with fees, right? And so, really, that's what happens in municipalities, when you don't take your levy limit and you can't cover your expenses. So what do? You either borrow, and that puts you in a downward spiral, or you raise your fees. And when you raise your fees, well, nobody likes that either. So, so we have to, and so then not only are you raising your fees, you're still raising the money either way, except that now you put yourself in a structural deficit. And I think we need to do a lot of work to maybe educate all members of council as we head into budget season. So that way we're not kind of slamming our fists saying, keep the taxes low. It's not everybody wants to keep taxes low, but it's the best way to achieve that. And it's not always done through levy.
So Harry or Todd, did you have anything you wanted to add to the Alder's comments?
No, it's just that balancing act of the taxes and the needs. I think that's exactly the policy question.
Okay. Any other questions, Alders?
What you said.
I have a question on the different iterations that may be performed. Is there a summary sheet that could be given to us on this committee? What was changed and what the results were? That doesn't show everything, it just shows the outcome?
Yep, I can help put that together.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think appropriate motion would be to receive and place on file.
So moved.
Second.
A motion by Galvin, second by Hutchinson. Any further discussion? Anything else to add, staff?
Did we have to open the floor for them? Or close
No,
the
not
floor?
as a guest speaker, no.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Nothing else from staff.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Item F, report of the finance director. Anything?
Nothing today.
Item G, informational, number 1, 2023 contingency account stands at $244,643.36. Director Ellenbecker, are you forecasting or foreseeing any items that might hit that contingency account this year?
No, I don't have nothing that's on the radar, other than, again, the law department may be asking for a carryover of some funds for the legal fees.
Okay, thank you. Item 2, next finance committee meeting will be held on October 24th, 2023 at 4:30 PM. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Galvin, second by Hutchinson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We are adjourned.